Yeah, I think when you come to college, like everybody says, oh, it's so much more, but you don't realize how much it really does take over your life.
I tore my ACL a month and a half into playing college lacrosse.
Yeah, it was tough for me for my 4 years here. There was a bunch of stuff that happened either academically or athletically, whether in front of people or behind the scenes.
I was at a point where all I could think about was basketball. It was hard. It was like my first love.
I think you really cannot understand the mental health of being an athlete unless you live through it.
There's a lot of anxiety coming into practice every morning, not wanting to wake up to an area that at one point I really loved.
It takes over your life in a way. It's a full-time job. So balancing everything in your life and not getting completely overwhelmed by your sport in the same sense is very challenging.
From a young age, we're taught to be tough, and that showing any kind of signs of weakness is almost like a failure. So that kind of was instilled in our minds from when we were younger.
I think growing up for a lot of people, they're taught to play through things.
Even in the classroom, people hold us to almost different standards. I just think because they know we can juggle things, and I've actually even had a teacher say to me oh, you're an athlete, so you have a harder shell.
There's a lot of pressure riding on you at the same time because it's you were brought into the team for a reason, and there's a bunch of expectations on you as well. Not only from the athletic point of view, but academically as well. Because I'll even admit myself that academically, my first semester, it was pretty rough.
I think for everyone it is very difficult for student athletes to talk about their mental health. I know for me personally, I always felt like my problems weren't big enough to go talk to someone about, which is not true at all. If you are struggling, that is a problem in itself. You should be able to talk.
I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to play a lot, score a lot, have all these different good things come to me.
It is such a mental toughness that you need to be pushing through all the time.
In high school, everyone's used to being the best player, and when you get to college, it's not really like that. So it's definitely more demanding. You have to put in more work than you had to before.
COVID hit our sophomore year. And yeah, it was brutal not being able to train and stuff.
It was visible on the field that I was stressed and I wasn't performing bad, but I also wasn't performing my best.
You're running to practice, and then after that you have left, and then you have to find some time to get food in between all of this, and then go back to your dorm and do your homework, and find time to sleep and rest and let your body recover from all the working out that you're doing.
You know, they're athletes, they can deal with it. They deal with way worse things. They get hit so hard with whatever, they get tackled with whatever. There's no way that their mental health could be to the same level as their physical health.
I do find myself at times not loving it as much because of how much pressure I feel like I put on myself and that maybe others even put on me.
I'm just really wondering how can I love it? How can I love it again? How can I go back to the point where I love it so much again? I would say that I was really excited to come to college and play basketball. It was my dream ever since I was in high school.
I was really excited, but also really nervous.
Definitely excited and nervous. I think that goes for every student athlete coming in as a freshman.
I think going into any team, of course, you're going to be nervous.
I was excited, definitely.
I was definitely really eager to get on campus and very excited, but I was also very nervous.
I think I was really grateful for the opportunity to be able to play lacrosse here. I was actually terrified.
Coming in as a freshman because of course you're excited, you're part of a new team, you can't wait to explore and see what college is like.
I was nervous that I wouldn't get along with the team or that I wouldn't like my roommates, just like normal college student things. But I was also really nervous basketball-wise because I didn't know what the competition level would be coming out of high school, since I was always the best player in high school and I knew I wasn't going to be that in college.
I say excited. I committed and then COVID happened. So I wasn't sure. I was really unsure about what was going to happen.
Being an athlete my whole life, I kind of when I was in high school, I knew I wasn't really ready to let go. Lacrosse, I started in 8th grade.
I started playing basketball when I was 12 years old. Seriously, I started at 12. And I was just playing, and I wasn't really thinking anything of it. It was more my dad that really wanted me to play basketball. He really saw potential in me.
Started to play volleyball actually I think it was 7th grade. Definitely late in the game of, being an athlete and learning the IQ of the game and getting used to it all.
I started playing basketball at a very young age. I think I was 5 years old. My dad played in college and he was my coach from a really young age. He got me into the sport.
So I started playing soccer when I was 4 years old. So you're barely big enough to kick a soccer ball, so it's more like running around and just getting exercise at the first place, and then I really just fell in love with it.
My backyard, I've been playing since I've had a hoop, so since I remember, since I was a kid.
I started playing lacrosse when I was in 2nd grade, but only really for my rec and my middle school team, nothing serious.
So I started fencing at, I think I was 5, around 5. Yeah, I was pretty young when I started. Thank you, Star Wars. But
I think that the college level is for sure way more demanding than the high school level in a lot of different ways. Physically, you're coming in, you're working out a lot more than you were used to in high school. You're lifting 3 or 4 times a week on top of practices every single day. You have conditioning, and you don't really know exactly how to prepare for that until you're in it.
I was really scared that it was going to be so different from high school. I wasn't sure what I was walking into.
I think physically, that's something you definitely can expect coming to college. You hear people say, oh, it's a lot with lift and conditioning and practice, and you kind of, I wouldn't say there's anything that can prepare you for that physical aspect, but it's coming.
I feel like the college level was completely different than the high school level, especially at my school. I'm from Connecticut, so in different areas I would say our sports are really, really good, and volleyball is definitely not at that level of being really good.
I think playing basketball at the college level is definitely very different from the high school level because for one thing, it's much more demanding on your body. You have a lot more responsibilities time-wise, so you have to fit a lot more into your schedule.
I would say that I definitely think that the college experience is way more demanding than the high school experience, but not necessarily on the physical level, but just mentally. It takes a lot you have to do good, you have to be good, you have to do well, not only in class, but also on the court. And you know that if you don't do well on the court, then everything that you've worked for is kind of to the trash, kind of goes out.
Mentally, it's also a lot more demanding because you're trying to stay on top of your studies and your social life and your sport all at the same time. And that can be a lot to handle. It's definitely a lot more time demanding in college than high school.
I think the mental part is definitely more than high school. I think that's where, we're all especially Division I athletes are used to being that top dog kind of at their high school. That's probably what got them here and stuff like that. And coming to college and being kind of the bottom and you're not put on a pedestal.
It's just a lot more expected of you and a certain I guess respect you gotta have for the game and for yourself and for those around you.
At the end of the day, when you're just drained because of your sport, and also you're just drained just thinking about it and thinking, oh, I'm not one of the top players of this team right now, how can I get better?
there's class or practice in the morning.
Usually I go to the trainer in the morning.
I had to wake up to go to practice because usually practice was first, but sometimes I would have class before, so I'd have to wake up, go to class.
I had to wake up at 4:45 in the morning.
As a student athlete, I wake up in the morning, work out with my coaches, go to class.
Throughout your day, you probably spend 4 to 6 hours at the gym.
There's film, there's walkthroughs, there's practice, you're watching film on your own.
If we have lift and practice that day, and then after practice, I usually get food with my friends.
After practice, I probably only had 5 minutes to go get food, 10 minutes at most.
Eat, come back to the pit, work out again, Eat some more.
And then you have to do like homework, or you have to find time for food in there as well.
I would try to find some time to eat in between all of my classes and practice.
You have to put that extra effort to kind of get everything done first so that you can then focus on being an athlete after.
So it's very time demanding, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed and consumed with your sport when it's taking up so much time of your life.
Eat some more. Go to class again if I have night classes, otherwise I'll just chill. Figure something out to do until I work out again at night.
I think it's really hard, especially in season, for school to come first because you're so worried about like playing, winning, playing time, trying to be the best for your team.
I definitely felt like I was held to high academic success with basketball, but it wasn't even, I was always like a good student, but it was hard knowing that I had to succeed on the court and do all of those things, and exceptionally with all the work that I was putting in extra into the gym.
For me personally, the way I was brought up, I kind of have to have good grades. So for me personally, I kind of hold myself to that, having a good academics.
I've missed a lot of class being an athlete, for traveling for games.
It always seems that whenever there's like a meet or something like that, like there's always a test like right after, right before. So it's like, oh my goodness, like what are we gonna do? Like
An email with my academic advisor from the pit. Hey, this, Pam can't suit up. She has a warning. And I came to those points because towards the end of it all, I was just kind of going downhill. And I'm not a student that actually ever like fails.
You prioritize your academics on top of your athletics because you are a student athlete first.
I have to try to put school first, but it is definitely difficult. I know a lot of people say they're better when they're in season with academics because it's like you only have certain time to study. I think it's like really hard to try to find time to study, especially in season.
being told like you have to produce results, but then you also have to produce academically and just put results all around.
On our team, I'd say my coach talks about it pretty often. Like it's pretty important to go to class, keep up with your grades, be sociable with your professors, and have good attitudes with them and all that kind of stuff.
Sophomore year, in March, I tore my ACL, MCL, and meniscus, as well as my quad was already torn at the time. So in April, I had surgery on all four of those, and I think nothing that I've gone through so far will compare to that.
I tore my ACL a month and a half into playing college lacrosse, our like first fall ball scrimmage, which really was really hard on me.
So right before COVID sent us all home, I tore my abductor, and I felt really alone because I was a freshman. I didn't really have a lot of work with the athletic training staff. I didn't really know how it worked. So going into the first place is really intimidating because there's so many athletes getting treatment on so many different things.
You're isolated in a place where like you have to work for a goal that like you're not seeing the outcome every day. So like you're going through physical pain that correlates to that mental kind of agony of like being alone and feeling in pain and having to keep going when like you don't know the outcome.
At the time I was struggling a lot mentally outside of lacrosse, and practice and like my team became my escape for everything. So I would like go to practice and it would be like the 2-3 hours a day that I didn't have to worry about anything else.
So when I came back, I feel like it was really hard to not be a part of the team in that aspect because you have to sit out, you're not allowed to get better and go to practice. You just kind of feel like you're not contributing, and I feel like especially as a freshman who wasn't contributing on the field, not even being able to train really took that last part away from me.
Was I gonna be the best like I could be again, or was it gonna look different?
I know everyone says like the comeback's stronger, but it's really like it's not that easy. It takes forever. It's like a year-long process, and you have all these like outside pressures. Like you hear of people coming back in like 6 months from an ACL, and you're like, and at 6 months I had another surgery.
And you kind of don't even feel like an athlete sometimes because you just feel like so weak and so out of a state that you're usually used to being in.
I felt like I couldn't show my teammates how much I was struggling because I didn't want to be like, oh, pity me, like, oh, I got injured, poor me, and like take away from the team and what they were doing and stuff like that.
I think mentally it's harder. I think at first after you tear your ACL, you have all the support of like your friends, family. They're like, you're gonna be fine, but then like after like a few weeks, you kind of lose that because they're kind of like forget about it.
I think no matter how much physical pain you're in, which I was in a lot, I feel like the mental strain is worse than anything else. because you go through ups and downs in your pain. Like sometimes it's really bad, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's manageable, but you're still living your life. You're still getting around, you're still going to class and stuff like that. So it's not like you're completely out of commission when it comes to your physical body. But I just think it totally transforms your mental state.
Like everyone just says, oh, you'll be better in the end. And I remember when I first got injured, everyone was like, the comeback is always stronger than the setback. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, I don't know about that.
I think it's more mental now than physical. Like I know I'm not really gonna hurt myself again, but I'm always worried that like if I cut too hard, like is it gonna tear?
It really just sucks and feels so isolating when you can't compete and be an athlete, because that's a huge part of your identity.
Giving up isn't an option, because regardless of if you want to play your sport, you have to like fix your leg and like stuff like that. So I think that was something that helped me, was like, even if I'm not doing this for my sport, I have to do it for my body and like to be healthy for the rest of my life.
In rehab at first, like you progress really fast at first. Like you get your range of motion back, like everything. So like each day it's another way to keep going.
You have to accept what you're going through, which is really hard, and then you have to not only accept it, but find a way to keep living your life and not let it be the only thing that consumes you, and a lot of times it is consuming you.
I definitely think there's a stigma behind the mental health of student athletes, because from a young age we're taught to be tough, and that showing any kind of signs of weakness is almost like a failure. So that kind of was instilled in our minds from when we were younger in the athletic world. So as we grew up, it just kind of got stronger and stronger.
Trying to put it into words what it's like being an athlete, because everyone in college deals with mental health issues. They say it all the time. The statistics of mental health and anxiety, depression, and suicide rates in college as a whole is crazy. And then just looking at the athletes in general, it is really high, and people kind of just associate them, I think, in the same way.
I think growing up for a lot of people, like they're taught to play through things and use whatever's going on in their head as motivation to play better or play harder. And that's not always the case. Sometimes they'll let certain things out in a different avenue rather than just the sport you play.
I definitely think that there's a big stigma around the mental health of student athletes for a lot of different reasons. Me personally, I grew up in a really competitive atmosphere from a really young age. So I started my club team in 4th grade. We're one of the best teams in the country, one of the best programs, and that made me realize from a very young age, you either eat or starve.
I definitely feel like there's a stigma that's held around the whole, mental health of an athlete, and I feel like that's something that makes me sad and that I really got to understand when I was playing, because you're supposed to be, it's kind of being like a man. When you're an athlete, technically, you kind of get into your more manly like ways and manners as a woman, and you kind of have to always be strong.
In high school, you're used to those game nerves and stuff like that, but you don't experience that like every day is game day with practice, because you're trying to earn a spot, and so every day you have those nerves of like, okay, I gotta perform good and like do the best I can. And then on top of that, like I said, the days are a lot longer and harder than high school, so that just takes a toll on you mentally.
And once you get to college, you're kind of like taught not to act like anything bothers you.
As far as like mental health, yeah, it was tough for me for my 4 years here. There was a bunch of stuff that like happened either like academically or athletically, whether in front of people or behind the scenes.
I think it is still an issue, especially for male athletes. I think it's more for men than women when they're like, you have to be tough, like you can't cry, like you shouldn't be upset over this, like you gotta keep going no matter what. And I've seen that with my brothers a lot. Like it's really like there's a lot of pressure on them because they think they can't be vulnerable at all.
I definitely feel like there is a stigma around student athletes and their mental health. Definitely just kind of always pushing through your day, going through your motions, going through the workouts, being okay with how you're treated, being okay if you're not playing.
It's really important that student athletes do realize it's okay to not be okay all the time. It's okay to have a bad day. And I think in our society it's like starting to be more regularized for student athletes to talk about their mental health.
You don't want to cry in front of your team because you don't want your team to feel bad for you. You don't want to cry in front of them because you don't want them to think that you're weak in a certain way, or that something or whatever got to you or a coach got to you, etc. You have to stay strong, which is hard sometimes to do, crying behind closed doors or going to the gym and just dragging your feet pretty much.
COVID affected my mental health in a different way than probably a lot of people because I was actually transferring during that time. So I had just left my previous school, which was Providence College, and I had no idea I was never going to come back again.
But I just think like it's sad to say, but some people will just, like we just said, like feel that pride kind of like, oh, I have to be strong, and not kind of show their emotions on their sleeve and stuff like that. So I think there is good mental health awareness for athletes here. I think it's more just that individual being willing enough to kind of ask for help.
I think for the stigma around mental health for student athletes has been like an ongoing thing, but I'm glad now that there's more like awareness about it.
So yeah, I definitely think that there's a stigma of having to stay strong for something that sometimes you don't have the strength to stay strong for.
In the end, I always say, like, no matter how bad it is, there's always going to be someone there to like hear you out or support you, and that's always a nice thing.
I think the advice I'd give to student athletes, especially if you're an underclassman and kind of undergoing a lot of things for the first time, is it does get better, which I know people say all the time, and they don't really believe it. It's similar to like trust the process. Like it's just one of those things you hear, but I think hearing it from someone that has gone through mental struggles, it means a lot more.
I would tell another student athlete that's struggling with their mental health to find somebody that they're really comfortable with, whether that's a coach or even a professor, a teammate, somebody that they could really confide in, and start there and make sure that you tell them how you're feeling so that you don't keep everything bottled up, because that tends to make things a lot worse.
Go to your school's resources. I know our school, Sacred Heart, has like a mental health counselor that is available to athletes, and she's definitely willing to help with, you know, any issues that you're struggling with.
It's sad because I can't even say stay strong, you know, because I know sometimes it's hard to stay strong, but I would say try to see a way through it. Try to stay positive as much as you can for as long as you can, and try to remember really why you started and what makes you want to keep going.
I think the stigma around mental health for athletes has been getting like better, in a sense that like I feel like people are more open to talking about like suicide awareness and like mental health of student athletes, especially because of like the recent events that have happened.
I think athletes are probably, they hold themselves to the highest standards than anyone else will ever hold them, but within that there is that pride aspect and all these things, and so that doesn't allow people's individual stories to be told, and I think those stories are what helps other people open up and feel vulnerable and say like, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Just know that it does get better and it does take time to adjust, but you find a balance, and it might take you longer than others to find that balance, but you eventually will. And you'll find time to see your friends, and you'll find time for your academics, and you'll find time to focus on your sport, as long as you don't overwhelm yourself.
Always remember that you're worthy of anything you want to do, and you're worthy of anything you really want to do.
As an athlete, you might find it hard to find an identity outside of your sport. Luckily, these student athletes have much more to them than athletics.
If you ask me who I was, I think I'd say I'm a sister, a friend, a daughter, a cousin. I think my family is a big part of my identity, especially because we live in the same town and everything. So a lot of things I identify as is like that family member, because that's what makes me feel good at the end of the day.
My name is Marie Leticia Ziba. I'm a basketball player, but I'm also a daughter, a sister, a girlfriend, a friend, a coworker. I'm a lot of things.
I'm Maya Klein, the basketball player, but I'm also the support system for my friends and family and everyone in my life that I love.
So I'm Mia Santinelli. I'm a soccer player. I'm an aspiring media professional. I'm also an animal lover and a shoulder to lean on.
I'm Maggie, the lacrosse player, but I'm also Maggie, the sister, and Maggie, the friend.
My name's Nico Gillette, the basketball player, but I'm also a creative mind.
I'm Pam Ellison, the volleyball player, but I'm also a businesswoman, a teacher, a friend, a daughter, a sister.
I'm Carly Strummel, the basketball player, but I'm also Carly Strummel, the friend, the daughter, the producer of this documentary, and an advocate for the mental health of student athletes. You're not alone.